Hey guys, what's up? You're watching Clique, and today we're going to be looking at the Hex Gaming Hyper Pro controller for PS4 and PC. This was sent out by Hex Gaming for review, but it doesn't affect my video or my review in any way. Before we get into the actual review, here's some quick gameplay with the controller from Dripz, who is a really good controller player. I decided to include this section into the video because while I did enjoy my time using the Hex Hyper controller, I wanted a second opinion from someone else who's also used multiple Pro controllers and that could help test its durability and push it to its limits, and also test its responsiveness at a very high level. I'll make sure to link his channel down below in the description if you guys want to check that out, but if you want to skip this section, I'll make sure to timestamp the video so you know where to go to. Special thanks to Yu for the gameplay, awesome stuff, and now let's get into it. Starting off with the packaging, it has a premium look to it with its dark design and blue strip going through the top of the box. Inside you get a carrying case for the controller, which has of course the controller itself that comes with 4 additional thumbsticks, so you get 6 in total. A quick start guide that shows you how to remap the buttons, and a service card that has instructions on how to claim your 6-month warranty. One thing noticeably absent from the contents of the packaging is any type of cable to charge or connect your controller to your PC or PS4. If you are looking to get that cable to connect your controller or charge it, the cable that you're going to need is a micro USB cable. Luckily, I had a couple of micro USB cables lying around since I sometimes use my regular PS4 controllers wired, but if you are planning on getting this controller, then that is something that you should know. Moving on to the controller itself, you get your standard PS4 layout with both analog sticks on the bottom and your D-pad and 4 buttons on top. The faceplate is not removable, so you cannot change the position of the analog sticks and you're locked into that specific layout. The buttons on the front of the controller do not have legends, and while I do prefer this minimalistic look for the aesthetic, it can be frustrating if you don't know the layout for a new game that you're playing and you need to reference the buttons. The triggers, bumpers, and rear buttons are labeled though. Instead of paddles, Hex opted to go with 4 remappable buttons on the back of the controller rather than add paddles, which have been known to have durability issues on many Pro controllers. The placement of the buttons are really good and they naturally align with where my ring and middle fingers would be on the back of the controller. The Hex Hyper is light and it feels comfortable to hold in my hands. The back rear buttons on this controller are a lot larger and easier to actuate than the top buttons, which require like a more firm press to actuate the buttons than the bottom buttons do, which are a lot softer and easier to press. The rear bottom buttons also have a decent amount of play or like looseness to them that makes them easy to move if you try to, but as far as my end game use, I wouldn't notice this and it never bothered me, but it is something that I did want to mention because this could be a sign as far as long-term durability and build quality of the rear buttons. When it comes to the sound of the controller, the rear buttons have strong tactile clicks that feel good to press. The analog sticks feel well made and durable, and the triggers were decent but could have been better if the trigger stops were more consistent. And the rest of the buttons like the face buttons, home buttons, and bumpers have a similar feel to the regular PS4 controller, except that they're slightly raised for more travel, which in my opinion feels better because it makes the buttons not feel like membrane and cheap. Here's a quick sound test of the buttons on the controller. There is also one more button in the middle back of the controller that is used for remapping buttons in a very simple and intuitive way. All you have to do is hold the remap button for about 5 seconds, and when the remap is solid blue, you can start remapping the face buttons to the rear buttons. Then you just press and hold the 2 buttons you want to map, and when it flashes blue, you're done. Then just repeat the process for the other buttons, and deassigning buttons is also a similar process. When you're completely done remapping, just hold the remap button for another 5 seconds and you're good to go. The Hex Hyper does work both wirelessly and wired with both PC and PS4. Wired is as simple as connecting a micro USB to the top of the controller. Using it wireless on PS4 is as simple as connecting it through Bluetooth. But when it comes to getting your controller to work wireless on PC, there's a bit of a workaround. Getting the controller to work wirelessly with Steam games just required me to turn on the PS4 gamepad option in Steam settings. However, to get my controller to work with certain games like Fortnite, Warzone, or the games that you usually want to use this controller with, basically anything other than Steam games, I did need to download a free software called Input Mapper. You could also try DS4 Windows, and I just want to emphasize that this isn't a problem exclusively with this controller, but it's just a common workaround when using any PS4 controller wirelessly on PC. But when I had the controller plugged in using a cable, I did not need the Input Mapper software. And this software is something that I have running minimized in the taskbar of Windows, so it didn't bother me, but if this is something that would negatively affect your experience, then keep that in mind. Before we get into the second half of this list, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button because only about 3% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. By being subscribed, it'll make sure that you don't miss out on any new reviews, and I would really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Thanks for watching, and now back to the video. As far as latency issues, I didn't have any with the wireless performance of the Hyper, and everything ran smoothly. When I played in game, the controller did feel responsive and quick. The wireless worked well, and I didn't experience any lag or inconsistencies, and overall the performance, whether I played in wired or wireless mode, was great. Checking out the trigger stops, there's 2 levels of depth that can be adjusted by a switch on the back of the controller. There's a full depression option, and then you also get an option that cuts the length of the press by about 30 to 50%, depending on how much force you use. I would definitely prefer for them to add an additional trigger stop that makes the trip for this even shorter, because the trigger stops themselves are actually a bit weak, and if you press hard enough, you can depress the controller even farther than what I think they intended it to be. And I just would prefer the trigger stops to be more consistent as well, and just overall be stronger and better. But they really should add an additional level, like a 3rd level of adjustment on the trigger stops. Overall, the trigger stops are decent, but they could use some work and improvement to make them even better, and on par with the trigger stops on other Pro controllers like the PowerA Fusion Pro or Elite Series V2. As for the durability of the controller, overall it has been pretty good, but as far as the long-term durability, this is something that I just really can't tell from using the controller, even for a few weeks or even a couple months after I got the controller. But I will make sure to make a follow-up video if I do have any durability issues with the controller or any major issues with quality control with the Hex Hyper controller. Switching over to the design and texture, the controller has a matte finish all throughout the body of the controller and a sort of two-tone finish with the front being white and the back being black. There is no additional grips or textures on the back of the controller, so if that's something that you want, you'll have to buy a third-party add-on. The material of the faceplate and backplate is what they call a soft touch material, and it is a smooth coating. It feels really nice and comfortable, so they did a good job on that. Going back to the layout of the controller, something I just want to mention is that for their PS4 styled controllers, they offer 4 paddles, but on their Xbox styled controllers, they only offer 2 paddles. This is something that I would like to see them implement on their controllers with an Xbox layout, and offer 4 paddles on those controllers as well. Shifting over to customization, the controller comes with 6 thumbsticks, 2 concave regular height thumbsticks, 1 concave long, 2 domed regular, and 1 domed long. I like that they included the 2 longer analog sticks for extra height, since I like to have my right analog stick higher for an increased range in motion and more control. And if you're into the dome thumbsticks, you can use those too, but I prefer the concave feeling on my controller, so that's what I used. The thumbsticks can easily be removed and switched on the face of the controller, and it's as easy as pulling it off and pushing a new one in. The quality of the analog sticks are great, and I never had issues with getting them on the controller, and they fit snug and didn't ever fall off. The Hyper does feature a 3.5mm headphone jack for plugging in an external headset or microphone under the home button, or what would usually be the PlayStation button. Looking at colorways, the Hyper Pro comes in a good variety of different colorways like plain black and white, but also more exotic colorways like Galaxy, Wood Grain Gold, Chameleon Purple Blue, Scary Party Red, and some other dope ones too. Now as for the pricing, something simple like the black or the white is going to run you about $150, while something like their Galaxy colorway is going to be around $180. And while prices are subject to change, as of right now the prices are in that $150 to $180 range for all of their pre-made colorways. And in case you were wondering, the controller does not come with any software and all the customization is done on the controller itself. So, do I recommend this controller? Well, the Hex Hyper controller overall feels premium, lightweight, comfortable, and I did enjoy my time using the controller. But it did have some questionable quality control issues, like with the back buttons being a little bit loose, and also the trigger stops not being as good as I like them to, because they don't stop at a high enough point on the triggers, but also if you press on them too hard, they might go in farther than what I think they intended them to. And while you do get good customization with an amazing remapping system and swappable thumbsticks, it's nothing out of the ordinary. Also, especially at this price point, I think the controller should definitely come with the cable that is going to be needed to charge it. With all that being said, I would still recommend this controller if you're looking to get a wireless, pro level PS4 controller, and you want something simple that gets the job done, and you'd also really like buttons instead of paddles on the back. The Hex Hyper doesn't have an insane amount of customization, but it does have all the essentials that you'll need, especially for a wireless controller at a fair price. It is priced relatively well compared to other pro controllers like the Scuff Impact or Scuff Pro, but it's also cheaper than controllers like the Astro C40 or Elite Series V2, although you're not getting that level of customization here. And while there were some minor concerns from quality control, I never actually had any major issues. But I really wish this controller was priced a little bit lower at that $130 mark, and I think that would really increase the appeal of this controller. So if you're able to wait for a sale, I think that would make this controller a much better deal. Overall, the Hex Hyper is a solid pro controller, but it could use a few revisions or improvements in a possible version 2 or upgraded version of this controller. So that's gonna wrap up my review of the Hex Gaming Hyper controller. Stick around to the end of the video if you want additional gameplay with a hand cam from Dripz using this controller. I hope this video helped you in your purchasing decision, or that you at least enjoyed the video. If you want to get your hands on the Hex Hyper controller, I'll make sure to put a link to that down below in the description so you guys can check that out. If you enjoyed the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, since it really does help out the channel. And if you're new here, I make all types of content on gaming tech, so if you're interested in this type of content, consider checking out the channel and subscribing. If you have any questions or want to talk to me, I go live on Twitch at Clique. I'll make sure to put a link to that down below in the description. We just play games, talk, and overall just have a good time. And if you want more content from me, I have a TikTok where I post tons of more tech related content, like more controllers, keyboards, mice, monitors, and a whole lot more. And finally, I recently launched my own gaming channel. I'll make sure to put a link to that down below in the description, and I've uploaded my first 2 videos, so if you guys want to go check that out, check out one of the links in the description. Like always, you guys are awesome. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.